Yeah. Good morning,
Today,
guys.
morning everyone, and thanks for joining us. Today we're starting with the basics of bookkeeping. So before we begin, I'd like to ask anyone who wants to ask any questions throughout to use our Q&A instead of using the chat. It's much easier for us to track the questions that way, and we can kind of answer them in good time as the opportunity presents itself. And then what I'll do firstly is run a little poll. So you'll have to give me a minute to start that off. But I'm just going to ask what experience people have of accounting software. So it should be appearing on your screen now. So the question is, what experience do you have of using accounting software? And the options are some, a little, or none.
There's no wrong answer.
There is no wrong answer. So we've 2 votes in there. Okay, well, it looks like we have a clean slate for you today, or a blank canvas, as it were. So everyone who's voted has said they've no experience of accounting software, so not
I
necessarily
love
a bad
that.
thing.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'll just give you a quick overview then of NOR, if you don't know already. We're an award-winning online accountancy and company secretarial practice for micro, small business and SMEs in Ireland and the UK. We are members of Chartered Accountants Ireland. Our costing is very transparent, so we'll always send out proposals that will clearly outline the costs for all of our services. We use digital processes, so we were kind of ahead of the game, I suppose, when it came to using video calls to deal with our clients. And obviously, we have a huge amount of experience there in the digital side of things, so we can make things run much more efficiently for you without having to deal with paper and boxes full of receipts, as Justin likes to call them.
Yeah.
Um, we're also experts in helping new businesses in Ireland, so we've experience with all sorts of clients from, you know, limited companies that are just starting out or that are pre-trade. We deal with sole traders and we deal with much bigger businesses as well. So we have members of the team that are here equipped to deal with all types of queries.
Perfect.
So I'll just give a quick overview of today's format. So as I said earlier, if you could use the Q&A to ask any questions that you have, and if there's anything that you want to know more about, be sure to pop a question in there or even email us on the details below. We can certainly tailor these webinars based on what people are most interested in learning about. So we are due to do a little shake up to this webinar, so the next one might be slightly different based on any feedback that you can give us. So just a little quick disclaimer, sorry, the information in here is just for educational and information purposes only. And if you have any questions at all that are any more complex, be sure to reach out to us and we'll get you the answers you need. So I'll hand over to Justin and he can give us an overview of today's agenda.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ron. So please, I will rattle on for the next 50 minutes, no bother. But if there's things that I'm saying or anything that you're curious about or just want to ask that question, then please do. I won't name and shame anybody. So there's no such thing as that old adage of there's no such thing as a bad question. Certainly, I've been doing this for long enough where a lot of it would just seem quite automatic to me. So if there's a term you don't understand or there's an element to it that you're just kind of curious about, then please ask the question there in the chat. I'd be more than happy to give you some feedback on it. That's the main thing, and the one thing that we always kind of want to stress is you don't have to be an expert bookkeeper, and I am not asking you to become masters of bookkeeping at all from just being in the webinar and all of the things that you have to do. The idea around this is very much that the systems that are out there now do it for you. They'll give you the prompts. They'll give it. So that's the best time to start is at the beginning. And if you don't have experience, you're nervous about it. It's impossible to break these things. They spend so much time and effort making sure that they work. The key things is making sure that you get a system that works for you, that does what you want it to do. So there's no point like this. The price points really do vary. The cheapest isn't always the best for you, depending on the kind of model and make of your business. The other way around is, you don't necessarily have to have the full bells and whistles if you're, basically just starting out. All of them have, the opportunity to adapt and to grow with your business. So, like the first step is actually choosing a software. So, get that list that's there. Setting it up then is like kind of your next stage, and that's what's going to save you the time. I'll touch on recording that. Usually, it's just a little 5 or 10 minutes at the end. Even if you're not involved in that or you don't think you're going to be involved in that, it's just worth knowing a couple of the points around it because it can really affect how your business model looks and how the future of your business could look. Just in terms of a couple of the thresholds and like things like tax exempt activity. So I'll just touch on that throughout the whole thing. I'll give you some of the benefits of online accounting software, and say please by all means put anything into the Q&A so that I can touch on that if it helps.
Yeah,
In
we'd love
terms
to
of
hear your questions. So.
yeah, in terms of like the bookkeeping itself, I always try and think of it in terms of just three things. If you can concentrate on three things in your business, then you will have good books. And those things are your purchases, your sales, and your bank reconciliation. Um, Now, there's a specific order that's kind of preferable. Like, so obviously, like we'll put sales at the top of that because we want you to be able to produce invoices and make sure that, you're billing for the money that's coming in. The second part of that is how much money you have to spend in order to get your business going or in order to get that product or service that's there to be invoiced. And then finally is that bank reconciliation. And let's say finally because it's a common thing where a lot of the times people will automatically just jump on doing their bank reconciliation and thinking that that's all of their bookkeeping because I've got my transactions in there. It's not the worst, but it's not the best either because your bank only tells one side, and it only will deal with things that go through your bank. If you pay for anything in cash, if there's um, insurance payments that come out in time, like it's all of these extra things that the bank doesn't show you. It'll only show you on a day by day or a month by month period. So focusing too heavily on that doesn't answer the whole kind of look of your business. So that's what I said. Get your invoices loaded. You've got a good idea of your sales. Get all the purchases loaded. You'll know where your money is going. For example, like you might have credit terms. You might have something now where you're paying 50%, but you've got to pay the extra 50% in 3 months' time. And that's why I wrote down those terms that you'll see as accounts payable and accounts receivable. And we use those terms more than sales and purchases because what we want to know is how much a business has in accounts payable or how much a business has in accounts receivable. And if that's like confusing to you, there's an easy way to remember that you'll be glad to hear. Accounts payable, P is for payable, P is also for purchases. So everything in accounts payable relates to your purchases. Everything in accounts receivable then relates to your sales. So by having that level of information, then we can see how much we've spent and how much we need to spend and how much we build and how much we're waiting to be paid. So that's why those terms of accounts payable and accounts receivable are put in there. Another thing is just be aware of business expenses. It can be a common like mistake in that some of the times people put too much in, some of the times people don't put enough in. And we'll always get queries around, well, I work from home, so how does my electric work? How does my broadband work? Be very aware of the fact that any billable expense there as a business expense needs to be in a company name. So if you're working from home and the electric bill comes in, you can't put that in as a business expense because that it's not the business premises, its primary function is your home. Now, that's in your personal returns, then you can claim a certain amount in terms of, for broadband, electricity, and you'll show those and you get a credit for it against your personal. So you can have those, but just be aware of that fact. If you're buying a telephone that you're going to be using for work, make sure that you get an invoice from, Three or Air or whoever, in a company name, not in your personal name, and make sure that it's an address that's registered. Those are the type of things that are there. There's obviously other business expenses. If you're going to Tesco's and you buying some pens and some paper, you can't realistically go up to the till or even the self pay and say like, right, I need a VAT receipt that's got the company address and everything on it. That there's kind of like an unwritten rule where there's a certain amount, like that we can accept that yes, that's a business expense because of the nature of what it is. Like paper, pencils, files, things that are obviously something that's going to connect to your business. Um, business, be very, very clear about making sure that it's separate. Um, you know, a business expense might be that you've bought sandwiches because you're on the road. That can be a business expense. There's nothing wrong with that. But there has to be limits on it. If they're looking for it, they're like, hang on a second, this looks like the weekly shop here. That they'll stand out. And what happens is they just end up somewhere along the line, or in year-end accounts, they'll get disallowed. So just be aware of what a business expense is. There's a useful guide. I think we still have it on the Kinor site. I think Ron probably has a link there.
Yeah,
But
I can pop the link in the chat there if you want to have a look at it later.
yeah, perfect. It's just, again, it's just one of those things that, like, on the other side of that is, yes, anything that relates to your business. If you're taking someone for, a lunch, that's because you're trying to get a sale or anything, that's allowed as a business expense. There's a different side to it then when it comes to VAT and claims and everything there, but as a legitimate business expense, that's what you kind of want to be looking at. I say we'll touch on this through. I don't need to, but there's obviously, I think in our day-to-day lives, this is quite different when I would have first started doing this webinar about 3 or 4 years ago. I would say this webinar has been going for, and obviously, like, adapted it over time with the things that are there. But like at first, there was a real nervousness around what the cloud is and what is out in that and the information and everything that was going to be put out there. But it's become such a huge part of our lives now. I mean, I think like every single person, has some element of their day-to-day life that results in a click, or like verify that through your banking app, or we just become very used to that type of functionality in our day-to-day lives. So ultimately, you know, we want to mirror that in terms of our business life, um, you know, and the technology and everything is there that what might seem really like, oh my God, that's so advanced and that's not where my business is really achievable. It's there for you to be able to do. The amount of time it will save you, and it's funny, we'll still get ones that like we still have people that will have software, but they're just nervous about using it. So they'll still sell a spreadsheet into us and be like, "Oh, can you look at this?" And it's I get where it comes from. Like I am 100% Excel sheet type of person. I would have been that from the old Sage days, but things have moved on so much. And if you're doing that level of work on worksheets and everything, like that takes you time. That time can be automated, and it's really, really easy to automate it. So, like, think of what your time is worth. I suppose that's kind of the bottom line. Like, if you could spend an hour on your business versus an hour on your bookkeeping or like typing up Excel sheets, like what would you prefer to do? And what is that worth to you? Like if you can be out there, making that difference to your sales rather than thinking that, oh, I have to sit there and go through all of this. And again, that's that knock-on effect of, you're focused on your business. We want you there. We want you to go out there and be successful. So, what you don't want is to have everything. And like Ron mentioned before, that box of receipts, that's my favorite thing there, where it's kind of like it sits in that corner and grows. And, you're like, oh, I'll look at that next week. And it becomes that job that you're like the last thing in the world that anybody wants to do. So set up, systems. And the good thing is with any of the softwares, and like I don't have a preference of one over the other, whether the only thing I'd say is if it's free, it's not worth it, or it will come with a catch. So start yourself off with a more reputable software. Like do stick to a Sage, a QuickBooks, a Zero, a Surf. Stick with something that's credited, because they'll be able to grow with you. Things that tend to be, believe me, if there was a free one out there, I would be plugging it all day long. But like they just won't have the functionality. They won't give you what you want, and it'll end up costing you more of admin time or more of an effort. So it kind of defeats the purposes. Obviously, the benefits of having anything that's cloud based is that real time information. It's the fact that you say like, Justin, can we jump on a call? Can you have a look at my account there, and I can look in and see exactly what you're doing. You can see to the level that, right, I'm typing in this invoice and it'll pop up on you straight away. There's none of that. Right, let me work on that. I'll send it to you. You have a look at it, send it back. And like, it becomes almost like that Chinese whispers, or that digital form of Chinese whispers, where things can change or something gets missed, or all of a sudden we've got two invoice numbers, 111, because
I think these are things we almost take for granted now as well,
yeah,
because so many of us are used to working in like on documents that are on the cloud. But yeah, I remember with not much fondness having, document version 3, version 4, version 5,
yeah,
trying to remember which one we're working off. And, if it's an Excel sheet, and I won't bash Excel, it has definitely great uses, but it's so easy to just make a mistake, press delete or modify something. And how is the
yeah,
next person going to know?
yeah.
So
One
I suppose
person
having
deletes a
that,
formula accidentally, and all of
yeah,
a sudden,
it happens to the
where
rest of us.
it says you were going to get £1,000 refund, you're going to get an £1,000 bill.
Yeah.
So within that, so like setting up your bookkeeping system, like that's the first. And obviously, as I said before, like raising an invoice. I've used Zero as an example. It'll play in the background just as I talk over, but like ultimately this is so when you get this recording, you can play it around and look. All of the systems run on the same principle. So in terms of your invoices, you need a contact, you need to put dates in, you need an invoice number, you need inventory, um, you need to say what it is, you need to see if there's tax, but they won't let you, any of the systems won't let you produce an invoice without all of that information. You won't be able to print it or send it if the information isn't there. So it's great. It's a fantastic prompt. And it's funny again there, where like so many times we'll see one of the key parts of information that can be there is how you want to get paid. And the amount of times I see invoices that get sent that have no payment details, that don't tell the person how they actually, when they want to get paid. And like, it's just one of those things that you kind of think, oh, like you get so caught up in, yeah, they're invoiced, I've done it, it's gone. Oh, I didn't actually tell them that they need to pay this on delivery, and like
Mm.
like it's just this is where that whole software is great, because it will say like it pre-populates. There's like standard invoice templates, and then you can adjust them. Um, I suppose so, like Ron's waiting for my usual little rant about invoice numbers. It's my own personal little thing, like, to say that's there. I always recommend people against just saying like, right, it's the first invoice I'm going to do, so this will be invoice number one, and invoice number two. And I kind of have my client-centric hat on there, where I say this in, if you're invoicing someone and they see it for the first time and these are services, and you want to charge them, and they're like, oh, invoice number one, so I'm his first client. You know what? I wonder if he's just using me as a practice. I want to,
Mm.
maybe I get a discount for being the first, or there's that. So the big difference would be if I was to even just say 2501, all of a sudden that's 2,500 in. For me, it's the year is 2025, and it's my first invoice in 2025. But it's a perception, and I think of those when you're doing invoices. Print out an invoice yourself and look at it and think, if I receive this from Justin, am I going to be like, wow, yeah, I need to pay this. Look how professional this is, with its company logo and everything. That's like, those are the elements and parts that are there. In any of the settings of them, it's really easy to adapt and move and go around and change these invoices. But they're such a key part of your business. Um, Again, like try and avoid, and it's a comfort. It's that comfort blanket thing that's there. But like if you've done, where you've done an invoice on Word and you're like, yeah, I like how this looks, and I'm going to send that. And all I'll do is I'll just change the dates on these, or I'll just change, and that becomes how you invoice. Like stop, build that template into your software system. It'll take a little time at first. When I say time, like you can do it in 10, 15 minutes. And when that first invoice is done, every single invoice will follow suit. And you can break them down into categories as well. So if you have a different type of invoice, say for, if you've got trade invoices versus a customer invoice, you can make templates of those, and then you'll break it down. Within Zero, certainly within a lot of the accounting systems, even when you go into, when I put in that contact, it will bring up the last invoice, the information that was there as a prompt. Like this is what you did the last time. So it's really great for triggering. You'd be like, oh, you know what? That's fantastic. You can do recurring invoices. So, if you're going to build someone for a 6-month period, you can put in the parameters of those that'll just automatically produce those over the 6 months, and those invoices are there for you. You can do it. I would recommend as well, when you are raising those invoices, don't invoice on what you're going to get paid, invoice on what the job is as well. That's one of those other things where, people always get a little confused. I think, right, it's going to cost 2,000. They're going to give me 1,000 up front, and then they're going to give me 1,000 when it's completed. The job is 2,000, so bill for the 2,000. When you get that first 1,000, you can pay that up against it, but you'll see that there's still 1,000 that's coming into your business. And this is where, that AP and AR becomes so valuable, because you want to know where money is coming from so that you know what you can pay out. It might even be like, certainly at the beginning, things can really seem like one-way traffic, that all the money is going out and out and out. And then like that first initial invoice can seem a long time coming before it comes in. Um, but if you're prepared and you can see, what the light is at the end of the tunnel, we're going to get this in, then I suppose as well, to not overspend to get to that first invoice there, have those set parameters that's in, think like, right, okay, I need to invest a little more on advertising because this needs to come in. And I think that goes for any business, doesn't matter whether it's a service or goods, if you're in marketplace sales, any of those things. Adopting that principle is so key, because it gives you that overall picture of how your business is developing. So I say, you can have a look. That's kind of the body of an invoice. It's great in terms of the bank connectivity as well for all of these softwares is there, that you can actually even send invoices, email invoices with a pay now click button and everything that will be there. So it'll do that, where it'll send to, I can send a bill to Ron, and it'll automatically be there when he opens it up, that it'll say, yeah, authorize this payment, through your banking app. And, he'll just follow those steps and it's straight away into your bank. So, the nature of all of that has changed, and that's built into these softwares. You don't have to go in and spend lots of money setting up, point of sale machines or everything. Obviously, depending on the nature of your business, but for straightforward invoicing, you can do things through bank transfer and everything, and have it set up. Then it just automatically goes to the client. It's very, very simple to do. So it's well worth
It's
taking
important to, I
advantage of
suppose,
that.
put
Mm.
yourself in your client's shoes as well, If you're a business and
definitely.
you have 10 invoices that you have to go and pay, and 9 of them have payment links right in there, you're just going to click through them and make the payment. Whereas if it's an old style invoice, a Word document, and then you have to go hunting for the bank details, and
Yeah,
if you make it more difficult for people, you're less likely to get paid. So it's good
yeah.
to
And
make it as
like,
seamless as
yeah,
possible.
no, you know, ill feeling half the time. It's just that, like, that's that one that will sit on the desk, be like, I must pay that.
Yeah.
And then Friday comes around and it's like, oh, I didn't pay that one. I'll get to it Monday, you know. So the flip side of all of that is obviously, as we said, like it's all that money that's going out. Now, there's so many systems that will integrate with your software. I really like them as much as a lot of systems will have it where you can like load things on directly. Using the likes of a HubDoc or Dext or a Receipt Bank or any of those is really useful. A, because it's got that two-way integration between your software and all of your receipts, but it allows you to keep that online filing cabinet, so to speak. So even things like, if you want to throw in statements, if you want to put in bank records, if you want to put in, drafts or like anything that, that you're not 100% sure whether it needs to be on your accounting software can sit in this virtual area. It's great because you can set them up that you can do mail forwarding and everything to them. So if you're getting bills and there's that PDF that comes through to your mail, you can automatically forward these to the likes of a HubDoc, to the likes of a Text. And basically, what it does is it uses AI to read these receipts, take out the key information, and move it across. Now you can still update the information if it's like right, I need to change, that supplier. You can do all of that. And then there's another section then when you can push it through to your accounting platform. And what it does is it sends that PDF version of the receipt. So your accounting system becomes very, very clean. It's got a list of all of your purchases. It's got the receipts and everything that are attached. The great thing with that as well is that you have that PDF version. It creates that version of all of your invoices. You can load these to your phones as well. So, if you're in a gas station, geez, I'm all American. If you're in a petrol station, then take a picture of that diesel receipt and it'll load straight into this. So if that diesel receipt gets lost or it's sitting in the window and it gets faded, like you don't have to, be like, oh, well, I've lost that business expense, or I think it was, or that's what it, like it's there. It's a real record of all of these items and everything that's being done. So uh, it's very useful. As I say, how we have it in terms of um, Zero, that it actually just links through the actual Zero page and it will bring you to HubDoc. You can load all the items that's in. It's even good. It'll tell you if there's a duplicate one or if it you've already done it. So it almost allows you to kind of scan through all of these. If you were doing things, and again, like with bookkeeping, you don't have to go in daily. You don't have to go in weekly. Even if you're working on a month-on-month basis, like so, we're in September now get all your August records together, you throw them into something like this. And I'm not sure if I put this one in, it's July's date. Did I put it in? If you put it into this, it'll tell you, like it says here, that potential duplicate document. They all work in that, so it'll let you view them and see them. So, as I say again, it removes the uncertainty around or that nervousness that you might have around your business, and say like it's doing a lot of the work for you. It'll give you those prompts. It'll ask you the questions before you can move all of these items on. You can clearly see all the information that's on, like that's a draft invoice, right? Okay, well, if it's draft, am I expecting the official, am I going to be purchasing this? All of that information can be there, and then it's just how you want to interpret it to send it to your own software. So, like, I'd recommend any business to use them. I say like auto entry. That's another one that links with Sage. They're worth that little bit of investment. They're worth that extra charge. Some of them have ones built in. Again, this sort of say like write down if you're only dealing with, you know, a handful of purchases a month, like 20 purchases a month, then there is inbuilt systems within QuickBooks, within Sage, that you can just do it directly. But if you're doing anything with volume, then these are really invaluable. So like once you're getting in, because it just keeps you on an even track, and it allows you to. The other side of it is if you have people working for you, if they're out on the road, or you don't want to give them full access to your accounting system, you can just set them up, as a user on a receipt bank, and they can just forward all their own receipts and everything that's in, and it can be there, and then you can manage them separately, so they don't have to see how much money's in your bank account. They don't have to see, you know, any of your financial information. They can literally just give you all of those things, and it stops you then chasing like all the time. You're like, oh, hey, do you have the receipts for that job that was done, down the country? Like they can be in control of their own set of seats and all the information that's there. So they're fantastic tools. It's I'd say a lot of the times it's just a nervousness that people will have around using them. But when they've done them, they're like, I've had conversations before, like, there were what would have been considered like fairly straightforward, like not huge transactions and everything that's there. And they're like, just in like it's taken me, 3, 4 hours each month to sit there and go through all of this. And I'm like, right, you need to show me what you're doing, because I know I can do this in half an hour and have a full set ready. And when you go through, it's like, well, this is what I do, and this is like, yeah, I just move that into that. And they're like, oh, like this is so simple. And that becomes the nervousness that it almost feels like, because we're talking about with that big bad accountancy word or that big bad bookkeeping word, we feel like it has to be more complicated than it is. This is the nuts and bolts. So like get that part right, all of the rest of it will fall into place. And then that's where, like, you can start looking for management accounts and everything that's there, and the accounts team, and they'll go through the doing CTs and any of the necessary filings. But if all of this nuts and bolts information is in there, it makes it very, very simple for them to do that. And then in turn, you don't have to go into paying lots of extra accountancy fees, because I've got this box of receipts. Like, when you can have a, controlled set of accounts with lots of receipts and all the information that's there, and so this is what we've done over the past year. I suppose I'd be devaluing the accounts work if I'd said that it becomes easy, but it's better to have all the information that's there, better to have too much. Then, so this is why we come to that bank reconciliation. That should be the last thing. And ultimately, what your bank needs to be is that link between all of your invoices and all of your purchases, and then matching them against how your bank statement looks. So, oops, sorry. If there's money that's coming in, um, what's that being matched to? What invoice does that relate to? What part of my business is that? And it almost becomes like a game of bingo. So you're looking through any of the items that are in there and linking it against um, the sale or purchase that's there. You can do those part payments and everything that's there. So, if the bill is for, 5,000, but you've only been paid for 2,500 of it, you can match 2,500 against that invoice. It goes to that contact. We've done all of that information and everything that's there. What you want to be wary of, and what becomes a common issue, and again, like it's just a kind of knowledge of getting used to it and using a system, is what people will do is they'll load all of their receipts on. It tends to always happen on receipts more than invoices. Um, but they'll load all of their receipts on and think, yes, right, that's all my receipts are on the system. And then they'll go into their bank and they'll say, yeah, well, I gave that money to Tesco. I done that B&Q. I gave that to Canva. And they start marking them all off on here without matching them against the actual receipts that are in there. And what you do then is you double account. So you're telling your bank and you're keeping your bank separate from all of those receipts that you've done. You will find that people will do it on receipts as well. You have to kind of take out that, if I say thought process, stop thinking, oh, I know I paid for that, so I'm going to mark it as paid. If you know you paid for it, then where is the receipt? Load the receipt and then mark it as paid. That's where we would always say that. There's certain items that you just don't have receipts for. Like things like bank fees. There could be, that monthly insurance that maybe you've got one quote at the start of the year, but it becomes a fee. You can set up and manage rules around those. So that's like really simple to do. It puts that added element of AI that's in there. Once you've done even 2 months worth of any of this reconciliation, you'll find that it really starts giving you prompts. It's like, you've spent this. I noticed before that this has always been for insurance. So is this the case again? And it becomes like a little trigger. Uh, if you do with any of the systems again, accidentally pay the wrong bill, that doesn't mean that's it. Oh, like, all my accounts are going to be wrong because I paid. How any of it can be fixed. In all the time I've ever worked with any of the softwares, there's only one time that I have ever turned around and said, we're going to be better to scratch what was done before and start again. Only once. And the only reason why I did that was because there was such a small amount of information that was there in comparison to the information that we had to put on, that it was actually easier to just have a clean slate and put it on. But if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, like I've been doing this the wrong way around. I've been doing it from the bank and then I do it in reverse, or like I'm attaching all of my receipts onto the bank. Like that's doesn't show up the same way. It means that you won't be able to have that page payables. All of that can be corrected. All of that can be fixed. You can undo so many things. I would always recommend for work in a draft form. So there's the two things I would always say: do all your work in draft, because when it's in a draft form, it can be deleted, and it won't ever sit there. Once you've kind of authorized something or confirmed something, whether it be a sale or a purchase, um, it's there for good. That's when it gets there. It can only be voided rather than deleted, and it's not there to make um, things difficult for you or to upset your accounting system. It's there to keep you right in a lot of respects. So it's there so you know someone can't go in and accidentally remove wrong receipt, or can someone go in and remove an invoice. Um, the better ways you credit note things out instead, and it just becomes a different way. Like so you can actually have a good clean set of records. So it makes it very visible that you're not. So it's like if I'm looking on the negative side, it's if you were to start deleting invoices because someone paid you cash, be like, oh, they paid me cash, so I'm going to delete that invoice. There'd be a record of that. So, someone will, along the line or an audit would turn around and say, like, right, there's a bill in here for a 500 and it was just removed. Why was it removed? Um, and you can turn around and say, oh, well, we removed it because they actually didn't take the service from us in the end. And this was created in error. And then I say, like, right, okay, well, that's great. You shouldn't have avoided it. You should have credit noted it out, and there'll be a different way to do it. But that's why that record is there. So, it's that audit scenario of, like, right, we've got 2501, 2502, 2505. Well, hang on a second, what happened to 3 and 4? That's how that audit works. And having good bookkeeping records and keeping things organized and neat, it is for that reason, and that's where they'll start to question. And I say that it's not everyone gets audited, but it's habits. Any of the things that we've said today is just good habit forming that's there. That's pretty much it in terms of bookkeeping. If you work on those three elements, And like, hopefully that doesn't sound like too overwhelming for you to be able to do. It is so straightforward when you are looking at the actual softwares. The great thing with all of the softwares is they have the opportunity to try, like, you can go in and get trial periods on them. So you might get like a month for free, and see how you feel, and work around with it. But they also have things like demo companies and everything built into them as well. So you can actually go into that, like, that practice mode, like, and you can have a go at raising invoices, have a go at how to do bank reconciliation, have a go at matching your purchases, printing report. Like, you can, like, they're full working systems. They just give you lots of raw information that you can play around with. So it really gives you that opportunity to kind of take the fear, because I suppose that's one of the most common things that I'll ever see when I'm going into the calls or the discovery calls around software, is there's a nervousness around, like, what happens if I do it wrong? And like, just don't worry, like, there's nothing that you can do that won't be able to get fixed. And most of the time it's just a case of, well, all you need to do is just amend it and redo this part of it, and it's fine. um, and like with anything, like, we always learn from the little mistakes or the little things that's there. So if you have sent out an invoice and you haven't told them how to pay you, it doesn't mean that they're never going to pay you. Just like, you can update an invoice, you can change anything that's there. Like, if you've put a receipt in and it was actually a pounds receipt, but you put it in as euros by mistake, then you can go in and you can fix those. If you've paid the wrong bill against the amount that was in the bank, you can go in and fix that. Like, so it doesn't have to be that, right, that's it, I've done two or three things wrong, so that, like, I've just wasted my whole system, and it's not going to be right. Not at all. Like, it's a large part of what we do. And I suppose, like, some of the times, and what I've done a lot in the past is we almost have like kind of like hand holding sessions, like, so if you are nervous, like, we can offer that, where it's just, for want of a better phrase to say, like, I give you homework. It's usually that, like, we can talk through similar to this, and it'd be like, right, I want you to go and raise an invoice. I want you to put on two or three of your purchases, and then, like, look at bank reconciliation, and you do it within that. And it's amazing how quickly you get that. And like, there's certainly clients I've got like 3, 4 years later, and sadly, from talking to them at the beginning all the time now, I'll be lucky if I get a 6 monthly heads up, because they're just the AI is kind of taken over, and they just got so used to their system. So, but there's some of those ones that were so nervous at the beginning, that just it seemed like the biggest thing in the world that they were going to jump into. Um, as
You like the
I
feeling of
threatened,
sending your kids off to school for the first time?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and so,
A mixture of pride and fear.
yeah. Um, Now, recording that, so, like, I will touch on it. I suppose, like, that is my main area of expertise, so I could certainly, I could talk to the end of the day to you on different VAT scenarios and everything that's there. I we brought it into it's like, that is such an important factor in our lives. So it's just one of those things that, in your business, you may never consider that, what, I'm always going to be under a threshold. I'm always going to do these things outside of the scope of VAT. But just be aware that death and taxes, isn't it, that they say that you can't avoid. Somewhere along the line, in anything, like, in whether it's service goods, or there's a VAT implication somewhere along the line. So being aware of what VAT is and what the implications to business and everything are is really important. Um, in terms of registering for that, like, you can register at any time. However, if you break in a threshold of 42,500 for services or 85,000 for goods, then you're required. Now, that doesn't have to be within a financial year. That is in any 12-month period. So, just because it gets to December and you think, oh, right, that's great. I was almost at my 42,500, but now I'm going into January, so I can scratch that. If January is going to be the month that's going to put you over 42,500 for that 12-month period. So if all of that stuff came in from, say, March, you'll have to register for that because they'll take that period being from March to the 12 months. So just be aware of that. Like, again, that's with those reports that will keep you right in terms of what you're doing and when you're getting to thresholds. And as I say, like, consult either like part of the VAT team or your accountant if you've got any concerns around thresholds or anything that's there.
Before you move on from that, Justin, let's say, for instance, you have like a big contract coming up with a client and you know it's going to push you over the threshold. Should you be really registering for VAT before you go over the threshold if that's the case? So let's say you've got a big contract worth 30K that's going to push you way over the threshold for
Yeah.
VAT. Should you be registering now instead of waiting until that comes in?
Yeah, I suppose it's a double-edged sword, that one, really. Like, you don't necessarily have to, but you would be advised to. Um, in a scenario like that, what might happen is if you don't register, like, so say even if there was an element where you're unsure, and maybe that's actually not going to take place until after that 12 months, and then it's only going to be 30,000 going into the next year. Like, there can be scenarios where you're not 100%, and you don't have to be. So, and what you don't want to do is then have gone through a whole VAT registration process and then find out, you know what, I didn't make it, because obviously you adding VAT onto that contract in itself is going to have an implication to the person you're supplying and you as well. So be aware of that fact that if it's definitely going to fall within a 12-month period, you're better off starting the process. And again, like, that's like, get the advice from your VAT team or accountant that's there. But I would recommend doing it because what happens, you can backdate VAT registration. So if you find that it's happened and you're like, right, well, okay, I'm going to backdate it to May. The problem is that VAT period has already closed. So if we registered someone now and their VAT registration comes through, and the 3rd of May was their VAT registration, May, June should have been filed in July. So you've already got a penalty from VAT, and it's really it sounds really unfair. But the way they're looking at it is you should have been registered, so therefore that obligation for you to pay that across to us is now due. So you need to, and you'll get that letter. Like, the registration letter can come through today, and in 2 days' time you'll get we've done an estimate. Next steps, we're calling the sheriff if you don't pay this amount by, and you're like I only just got my registration. And the way they'll view it is that filing deadline has passed. So, like, work on a bi-monthly, that like May, June, the deadline was July. So it doesn't matter when your registration comes in. If you've got sales or like money that's owed that pertaining to that period, you are now late. So if you think of it in terms of that scenario, being prepared is always better. Now, you might not have made any Irish sales, and this could be the first thing. As you say, it's going to put you straight over. In order to prove registration, you have to have presence in Ireland, and say, like, this is this is where I could take the extra couple of hours of the day to discuss all of the scenarios around that. But if you send them that contract, if you say, like, look, this is what we're likely to do, then you'll get a registration based on that. Is more of the black and white. There can be loads of grey area around that, but that's like kind of the black and white of it. Revenue love getting money. So if you're going to turn around and say there's a likelihood that we're going to get money, then there's definitely a likelihood that they're going to give you a VAT registration. The big one, I suppose, that catches people out is VAT exemption. So people like think it's like, oh, it's great, and it comes around through coaching is probably one of the main areas. Like, well, this is a VAT accept activity, so it's great. We don't have to be registered, or I don't have to register for VAT because all of my activity is going to be around coaching. You may have to register even if you're well under the threshold. if you're getting any services from intra-community have a tax-exempt business, you are liable to reverse charge, which basically is an added 23% cost on purchases made outside of the Irish community, regardless of whether you're charging VAT or not. And it sounds really unfair, and I suppose the only way I can kind of justify it in terms of a VAT perspective is what they want to do is even the playing field. Because if you're a consultancy or a coaching business and you're doing exempt activity, and you're buying all of your marketing and advertising and everything from America, you've got an unfair advantage over someone that's got the exact same business but is getting all of their marketing and advertising in Ireland and paying 23% and not being able to claim it back. So what revenue is saying is that you can't have the bites of both apples. You can't not charge that, but then not pay that somewhere along the line. And that's that part that I mentioned where that is always present. There has to be that in a cycle somewhere. So if your business model is that you don't pay any VAT and you don't charge any VAT, you're likely to be wrong, and you definitely need to get some advice, because what can happen is you can get caught out and they'll say like, right, well, I want 23% of all your purchases. And it can be as simple as something like a Canva subscription for 30 a month can trigger that registration because you're buying it from America, but your business is tax exempt. So you have no reclaim, but what they'll say is, well, we want the 23% of that purchase that you made. So you then have to pay a cost of revenue. So if you've made 10,000 in purchases from America or from outside of the Irish community, revenue will be looking for 2,300 to pay to them. That's it.
Which is obviously not a nice surprise to get, and
Yeah,
this is why
so
you consult an expert and get out ahead of these things, so you know what your
definitely, it's
liabilities are.
just why it's there, because we do find it common, I suppose they don't explain it enough, and even though with revenue, they'll give you a very clinical answer that can be quite misleading. It's so you'll be thinking like, right, okay, I'm only dealing in tax exempt. Now there's different elements. So there's a 0% code, which is different to tax exempt then. So there's things like food items, etc. You can have a lot of those that might be 0%. You can deal in those and have a full VAT registration and have reclaim because it's a 0% code. It's not a tax exempt code. So there is a difference. So that's why we say standard rate is 23, reduced rate is 13.5, second reduced rate is 9, there's a farmer's rate 4.7, there's a 0% rate, and then there is a tax exempt rate. Be very, very careful how you put things down on your software, because if you start using tax exempt as a term rather than 0% or rest of world 0%, the implications around that activity can be very costly. And I say, I don't say that to scare anybody. It's very much ask the question, look at your model. You can have things like partial recovery. There's absolutely nothing wrong in running a tax exempt business, by the way, absolutely nothing. But just be aware of the fact that revenue do like their slice of the pie. You can get things like partial recovery where maybe there's a small element of your business that deals with tax exempt activity, so you 50% of what you do is taxable and 50% of it is tax exempt. Within that, within partial recovery, you're allowed to claim back 50% of your purchases. So and I say it does get a little complicated. So if you hear tax exempt and you think, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing, so it's grand, I don't need that, consult with somebody. Better to do it early, because it might even be that you just need to change even how someone will work for you. So it's consultants and things like that, how if they're on a payroll versus if they're a consultant they're not charging you for that, but they're working in the UK, for example, there's an implication there. So just get the advice. The standard VAT registration is bi-monthly. You can get 4 monthly, 6 monthly, even yearly, but they're very difficult to get They're more reserved for specific types of business, where they might just be getting that one sale in a year's period, and they're all things that's there. You've got cash basis and accrual basis, and it's just, again, for that, it's a funny one where people will confuse cash basis with thinking that, oh, it's cash basis, so that means I take cash. It's got nothing to do with that. Cash basis is actually to do with that fact that I'm billing someone now and they're not going to pay me for 3 months. So you can get cash basis accounting where basically what will happen is when they pay you, you pay the VAT, rather than standard invoice procedure is the second you invoice someone, that VAT is then due. So if you're billing someone today, then that VAT is due today. As I say, like with any of this is very much a skate over, but you'll get full advice. There's also things like these, to do with business to business sales throughout Europe. You can get Vatos now, which is the one-stop shop, which allows people to do marketplace selling and charge like French VAT, German VAT, Spanish VAT as an Irish company, and then just do one return each quarter. And then yearly, you'll have a return of trading details in Ireland, and that basically is just the summary of what's been filed with revenue over the year. So, like, it is a real skate over, and it is more there just to pique your interest, should I say? That maybe you're like, oh, actually, you know what? I must have a look at that. And in terms of that, I would say, you might be thinking, I never want to be that successful, or like, I'm happy with where it is. But by default, you might be sitting on that gold mine that everyone's going to absolutely love, and it's going to push you over. And what you have to consider is the VAT implication. If you're charging someone €100 for your service or good, if it makes you VAT liable, all of a sudden you're going to have to charge them 123, or you're going to lose 23% of that 100. So you're thinking like, right, well, it could take off, it could be really. So from the beginning, why don't you charge them 120 or 115, and then always just charge them that? So they're not ever looking to be like, hang on a second, I got you from this in June and it was 100, and now all of a sudden in July you want to charge me 123, because they could be in a situation where they can't reclaim back. So that's a direct cost on them, and it might affect you in terms of like, you know what, I can't afford it now. I could afford it when it was 100, but I can't. I can't afford it at 123. So think of those elements that are in there. So like, I wish you the very best of luck with it. As I say, don't be afraid. There's so much information that's out. Maybe avoid Dr. Google in terms of what is the best accounting package, because that'll just be down to whoever's paid the Google metrics as to what the answer will be. I say, like, write down what you want from software, and then look at the softwares that are out there and see if they tick the box. So, like, there's certain ones. If you're dealing with multi-currency, I would recommend Xero. If you've only got handfuls of transactions, then definitely Sage, QuickBooks, that are perfect and can grow with you. Sage 50, Sage Accounting as it's called now for the online version, great tool. They all do things the principle is exactly the same, but they'll always have little differences. If I could amalgamate them all and have one master accounting package, it would be fantastic, because some are great for accounts packs, some are great for VAT, some are like, not one of them does everything to the same way, but they'll all be able to help you with your business. They'll all save you loads of time, and
I suppose if
there's
you're
no bad time to
undecided, there's
start.
free trials out there as well. So,
Definitely, yeah,
just
yeah,
give them a little test drive, see if you think it's going to work for you. And yeah, it can be just personal preference as well.
totally. But yeah, enjoy the journey, and like, sure, we're here. So, get in contact with us for any of the things that be there. Kieran, you will get a copy of the recording, so they will be sent out to everyone who registered that's there. But I'm glad you found it useful. So the reason why the videos are there is because you'll be able to kind of slow them down and see it and everything as the step by steps that are on. But certainly, if you need any extra support or anything, you know where we are. Perfect. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Justin, for sharing your knowledge as always. And yeah, if anyone has any other questions that we haven't answered here, or any feedback that you have for us for things that you'd like us to cover in the future webinars, you can contact us on the details there. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
perfect. Thanks now. Bye.
Bye bye.